On today's episode, it's our fourth annual discussion leading up to the draft with Dante Collinelli. We are going to talk everything Miami Dolphins and the draft, including some of his favorite fits for Miami. I'm going to ask him some of his late round and UDFA guys that he likes. We'll talk about also what our guts tell us the Miami Dolphins could do at 21 and 55. And really, should the Miami Dolphins be focused on building the trenches through the NFL draft? We'll talk about all of that and so much more. Smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. Let's get into this.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again! Touchdown! Beautiful day to be a Dolphins fan. Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one, and we're joined by Dante Collinelli of the 33rd Team and Dolphins Talk to discuss the draft, our fourth year in a row of doing it. How you feeling, man? Only a week out from, 6 days from round one, and I know it's not as stressful as a time as it used to be for you a couple years ago, but how you feeling about the Dolphins and leading up to the draft?
Yeah, I mean, it's still stressful. It's just a different type, you know, like now my job isn't watching 300 players. It's making sure other people watch 300 players, but I'm really excited. I think, the Dolphins hadn't had a first round pick in a while. You know, I feel like I just sit on my hands for a couple days, but now we're getting right into the action this year, man. So I'm pumped. It's going to be cool. I think they have a really good opportunity to get a good player at 21 and 55. And we're going to talk all about that. So exciting times still.
I want to get your opinion on this because I know you've had your hands in, the draft community on Twitter for a while, and you've been doing your articles and everything like that. What are your thoughts on, fans who get locked on one player? Last year we kind of saw it with Darnell Washington. This year we're kind of seeing it with Jackson Powers-Johnson all over again. What are your thoughts on, people constantly getting locked in on one player? Because what I try to tell people is have a bunch of players you like at each draft position, because if not, you're setting yourself up for heartbreak. Are you ready for the chaos that breaks when we don't take Jackson Powers-Johnson at 21 and he's on the board?
Yeah, I'm completely ready, right? Because it happened last year, right? Like everybody wanted Darnell Washington, and it ended up being Cam Smith, a guy that was one of the players that I had talked myself into. I think I was on your show last year, and I was on Drive Time with Travis Wingfield, and I said, hey, I think they can take a corner with their top pick on both shows, and that's what they did. And I'm not saying like, I have a crystal ball. That might be the first time I accurately predicted Chris Greer in the first round ever, right? The second round. But my point being is that NFL teams tend to make themselves comfortable with multiple solutions and multiple picks, and I think it's a good practice to do that as a fan, because if you are just stuck on one position, one player, there is a overwhelming possibility that you're going to be very disappointed. And so the easiest way I tell people to do it is you have to, when a pick is made, you don't need to just say, it's bad because it's not X position. You need to think through it a little bit, right? Like Cam Smith was drafted last year, and you know what? He might end up getting a lot of reps this year because they moved on from Xavier Howard, right? Like sometimes teams draft for the future, or sometimes you don't know about injuries that guys have or cuts that they're going to make, or you don't consider future contracts or stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that you should just shill for the team. If they do something stupid, they do something stupid. All I'm saying is consider what happens, right? And then think about it critically, because that's what the teams are doing. Like, teams make mistakes, obviously, and we as draft analysts make mistakes, but teams think it through. They spend time thinking. I promise they thought it through. Now, whether or not that they thought it through correctly is a whole other conversation that we can have. But it's just not a good practice to get locked onto one pick. I used to do it when I was like new in the industry. I forget who it was. I wanted for the Dolphins at 18, the year that they took Austin Jackson. Antoine Winfield, it might have not been an 18, but like Antoine Winfield was like an all-timer. I was sick to my stomach when he
was I. That's why I wanted at 26.
Yeah, like I was sick. Every time I see him make a play for the Buccaneers, I'm still sick. Like it was just like I wanted that so bad. And so that was a huge lesson for me. I think that he was the 2020 NFL drafts, like 4 years ago-ish. It's just not a good practice to get into, man. You're opening yourself up to a world of hurt for no reason.
Bro, I feel that because the three guys, I said 4 guys. I said, you need to take Tua because I knew Burrow would be off the board. You need to take Tua for the QB. You need to find a way to turn that 18 into Tristan Wirfs. And then I said with 26, you either need to take Antoine Winfield or Jonathan Taylor. And now I'm absolutely sick when I watch all those players. And where's Noah Benogany flipping burgers right now, right? So, you know what I mean? So, listen, Cam Smith, I wanted to get your opinion because I don't even think I've asked you on this channel. Maybe I have. I don't know. But relative to what you remember watching him in tape-wise, listen, these fans who have jumped the gun and because Fangio clearly had a vendetta or whatever for this kid, you know, I know you see it. There's people in this fan base that are already labeling Cam Smith a bust because he wasn't an all-pro in year 1. What are your thoughts on Cam Smith and being a contributor in year 2? Because I actually tweeted out, I think a lot of people are going to owe this kid an apology. You know, I think there's a reason why Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard were going to Vic Fangio and saying, yo, you need to play this kid. You need to sit Eli, right? You know, I don't think a guy like Ramsey would put his neck out there for a kid he didn't A, think was ready, or B, could, you know, do the job to some extent. What are your thoughts of Cam Smith going into year 2? Because, man, that tape was really, really good. You know what I mean? So, you know, first round talent with some maturity issues is how I viewed him.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm certainly not writing Cam Smith off, right? Like, there's no reason to write him off. I think there's no reason to feel. I honestly, I feel the same way about it. Like, he didn't play last year. I don't know. Like, and I think, you know, people are going to jump down Vic Fangio's throat. And honestly, like, I don't really feel that way. Like, he didn't meet whatever expectations Vic had set, and he's got a fresh start. He's got another opportunity to do it. So I'm very confident that Cam Smith can be a very solid NFL football player. I don't think that he's ever going to be like a Jalen Ramsey or anything like that. But you know what? I think he's a really important developmental player because I think a lot of people really like Kendall Fuller, and I think Kendall Fuller is a really good free agent signing, but he is not your long-term answer at corner. Yeah. He was good last year for Washington, but there's some things on tape that make you think that maybe the cliff is coming for him. You know, again, he's almost 30 age corner. Again, I'm not trying to crap on Kendall Fuller. I think he's a good football player. My point is that Cam Smith is your long-term answer, right? Like Jalen Ramsey's getting up there in age. Kendall Fuller's an older player. You know, you need Cam Smith to be something. If he's a starting outside guy, if he's a slot guy, like whatever it ends up being, Cam Smith needs to be a part of this team, right? And, you know, we'll get into this later. Like, I think there's a fair argument they could use more corners, right? But Cam Smith needs to be an answer for that at some point. So I still like Cam. I'm not writing him off, anything like that. But at the same time, I'm also not going to sit here and be like, I just think last year's a total wash. Like, it's a little concerning when you don't get on the field. And I think that that's a little warranted. But again, he's got a fresh start. He's got a nice chance. Let's see what he's got because he's talented, right? Like the tape was good. I think he was worthy of where the Dolphins picked him in the second round last year. So I'm excited to see what he's got this year. I hope he gets on the field for sure.
Shout out to Brad Martin. I forgot to shout him out yesterday. He donated 5 memberships yesterday. So shout out to Brad Martin. All right, let's get into some of the stuff. So I'm going to start it off easy for you. All right. Let's start about this. We've kind of delved into it a little bit with Jackson Powers Johnson. I'm a big proponent, especially at 21 in the first, you take BPA. But you got people out here, you know, they say, oh, Miami shouldn't draft a weapon or an edge player because we need offensive line help, blah, 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 blah. So I'll kind of encompass it. Okay, you look at, you know, you talked about contracts coming up. You know, they got the out with Chubb in 2025. We don't know what Chubb's going to be when he comes back in, let's say, November, December from his knee injury. And then he's got the out next year. Then you got Jalen Phillips' money, basically 50-year option, not this season coming up, but the season after, and then his real money kicking in 2026. So, and then you see, Christian Wilkins, we basically added a bunch of rotational players to fill out for both Christian Wilkins and Raekwon Davis to an extent when you look at it. And then on the flip side, obviously, where our interior offensive line is at from center all the way out to the guard positions. Should Miami be focused on building the trenches in the NFL draft in your guesstimate, or should it be, hey, watch how the board falls in BPA?
I think you can go BPA 21, but I think you don't want to get too carried away with that, right? Because I think the Dolphins, here's the thing with the trenches, right? Like the trenches are, in my opinion, like outside of quarterback, like they're the next up for me. It's edge, it's offensive line, and then it's corner. Like those would be the next up premium positions. And I think you get into things like receiver, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I have a hard time believing that trench won't be BPA at 21. Where I think the more interesting conversation is how the Dolphins delineate between valuing a tackle versus valuing interior players, and then also on the defensive line, how they delineate edge versus interior defensive line, right? So is BPA for them Jerzon Newton or Jared Verse? Like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, right? Because we can sit here and be like, oh, they need D-line, they need both spots. And like, that's true. The list of healthy edge rushers right now is Shaq Barrett.
Yeah.
That's it. No one else is healthy. As much as I like to believe that Jalen Phillips is going to be back for September, I think that's a little bit overly optimistic. Like that was a serious injury. Now I think he's going to be back early in the season. I have no problem. Like he's going to be a very good football player. I hope they pay him, but I don't know how good I feel about him early in the year. We don't know when Bradley Chubb's going to come back, and they don't really have a lot of depth there, right? Yeah. So I think edge is a huge need, frankly, like now and in the future, as you mentioned. Yep. So, but again, you look at defensive tackle, and it's like, okay, the best defensive tackle on the team, Zach Sealer, and after that, it's Tart, probably. And like, I think Tart's good, but again, like, that's not going to stop me from taking Johnny Newton at 21, right? Yeah. So, like, I think it really comes into the question of, yes, I think they can go BPA, but I would be pretty surprised if that doesn't end up being a trench spot. We know Chris Grier likes his premium positions. This is not somebody who likes to draft the tight ends and running backs of the world. And I think the larger question, and one of the reasons I don't think Jackson Powers-Johnson is ultimately going to be a player that they target at 21 is I think guard and center fall into that non-premium position for the Dolphins.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
I do not think that they value it that highly.
He's never drafted an interior offensive lineman in the first round. But let me ask you this, is because you mentioned Newton, is defensive tackle starting to become a premium position based on the market to you?
So I think there's a good argument for that, for sure. I'm a little bit biased just because I love defensive tackles. It's my favorite position to watch that isn't quarterback. But I think it's getting there. I think it's a lot closer than guard, even though we saw the guard market explode this year. I think guard could get there at some point. But for me, I think the value of having a really, really good interior pass rush in a league dominated by quarterbacks is just so valuable. It just is. It's so valuable. And the more we get these quarterbacks who are shorter and like to dance around in the pocket and don't like getting pressure, right? Like, these interior players who can create a little bit of quicker pressure necessarily than the edge guys, right? Because they don't have to go all the way around the pocket. If they win right away, they're right in a dude's face, right? Like that is going to become, and I think we've seen that slowly become more valuable. Now, I don't know that the NFL is going to be at that point yet, right? Like I still think that, if Chris Grier had to pick between Jared Verse and Johnny Newton, my guess is he would take Jared Verse. But again, I think IDL's getting there. Like I think it's starting to creep up the premium position rankings because guys like Chris Jones are getting their money. Obviously, Aaron Donald just retired, but he got his money for a couple years. Dexter Lawrence is a monster for the Giants. I mean, just a tremendous football player. There's a bunch of other guys. We just saw Christian Wilkins get paid for the Raiders, and I love Christian Wilkins. He deserves every cent. He's a good football player. Dude has 1 year of pass rush production and got all that money. Like that position is starting to get valued at a point where maybe you do consider Johnny Newton on the same level as somebody like Jared Verse. I don't know quite that we're there yet, but we're getting there. It's close.
So Johnny Newton or Byron Murphy?
Oh, it's Johnny Newton for me. I'm going to be honest. It's not
110%.
close.
I agree.
It's not close for me. I like Murphy. I think he's a good football player. I have a high grade on Byron Murphy as well as I have on Johnny Newton. But Newton for me, and you've been doing this a long time too. Like, I cannot remember the last time I saw a player who just stacks and sheds this consistently. Every rep. He's got short arms and he's a shorter dude. Don't matter. Just every rep. It's just stack, hands, swim, dudes on the ground. He's doing something in the backfield. Like he's not the most explosive player. Like, this is not Quinnen Williams, who's just like a monster on the interior. But technically sound,
ridiculous.
He's it's just insane. I've never seen somebody who just wins reps so easily against all different types of offensive linemen. Really, really impressive football player. He's like my second highest rated defender in this class.
Let me ask you this. Jalen Carter or Johnny Newton?
Oh, Jalen Carter. Carter's athleticism is just,
I know, it's ridiculous.
Dude,
but I got to say this. I look at Johnny Newton, and I've been telling, my subscribers this. I think he's the best one-off for Christian Wilkins in this draft with a higher.
I agree.
I think he's got higher pass rush upside than Christian Wilkins because of the technician ability, like you talked about. Like, I honestly, Newton's film was some of the funnest I watched during the draft process. Not just me personally, but I remember like when I was getting into them, and I remember hearing, everyone talking about, Byron Murphy, top 10 pick, da-da-da-da-da. And then I remember finishing watching them, and then I'm like, let me go back and watch these two again, because really, I don't, you know what I mean? And now the word is still about Byron Murphy. Like, someone who's in my chat right now saying that Alan Popar was apparently saying on his show that Byron Murphy is a better pass rusher than Johnny Newton. And I mean, you know what I mean? I can't even get there, but
I think Murphy's pass rush upside is higher. He is a better athlete. He is quicker, right?
But bro, when you look at right now,
I'd rather have Newton. Yeah,
Newton was way more disruptive consistently to me, right? Like, I
agree.
Know. I agree. That was just me, but all right, so. Okay, you just talked a little bit about 21. So what does your gut tell you they do at 21? Is it offensive line or defensive line? And I want to say this. The guy that I saw you talk about, that I've been telling people about since I watched him, he screams Chris Greer on tape, is Amarius Mims.
Yeah.
I think this is the one where people are looking at the Graham Barton, because Graham Barton's stock has just freaking gone through the roof the last couple months. And I like Graham Barton. I just can't get there at 21. What are your thoughts on maybe what does your gut tell you 21? And then what are your thoughts tell you on Amarius Mims potentially being the O-line pick, no one's suspecting that Greer takes that card to the podium?
I'm going to be honest. I think the only two offensive linemen that they consider, if they stay at 21, if they trade back, that's a completely different conversation, because then you can start talking about the Graham Barton, Jackson Powers Johnsons of the world. If they stay at 21, there's two guys. It's Mims and it's Fashanu from Washington. I think those are the only two guys that they look at, because I think Fashanu's shown you enough. Maybe he's got the arm length. He checked that box at the combine, looked really good in positional drills. He's shown you enough that he can play left guard for a year and then kick out. Yeah. And then so Mims, I got to be honest, is my personal, like, that's where I hope that they go. That's what I want the pick to be at 21. I hope it's Amarius Mims. I remember watching the college football playoff tape this summer from 2 years ago when Georgia won the national championship. They beat TCU. He played, those were his first two starts of the year, I believe. Dude was the best player on the football field when Georgia was on offense. And that's like a ton of prospects across the board. And that includes Broderick Jones, who the Steelers took in the first round last year. Like, Mims, I think people have this perception of Mims that because he hasn't played a lot of football, he's some like raw, complete, like ball of clay who's not ready to play football right now. And I don't feel that way.
I get that more with Guyton than I do with him.
I agree. And I like Guyton too, not at 21, but I like Guyton too. But for me, Mims is, I think, a lot more technically sound than people give him credit for. I'm not saying he's perfect. There's still some instances where you go, okay, like there's clearly a guy here who just hasn't seen that before and he's not prepared for it. certain pass rush counters, certain blitzes, right? So there's going to be a learning curve there. I'm not saying like that he doesn't need any growth or that he doesn't need any development, but I think people are really underestimating how good somebody who, I mean, what is he's like 6'7", right? Pushing
Yeah, bro.
6'8" with those arms is going to be in an offense where the ball just comes out like that 90% of the time, right? So I think like for me, like Mims, if he's going to be successful, if he's going to reach his ceiling, 6'7" and 3/4, 340 pounds. That's 91st and 94th percentile, 86-inch wingspan, 97th percentile.
Yep.
And he jumped 111 inches, which is 85th percentile.
Disgusting.
Really, really good explosive athlete. If he's going to be successful anywhere, it's Miami. Like this is the scheme. This is the place. I think worst comes to worst, he sits behind and learns behind Teron Armstead for a year, and then he replaces him next year. Like that's where I'm at with Mims. 21 overall, I got to be honest, I think it's going to be defense. I really do. Like, I think it's going to be one of the 3 edge rushers who are expected to go in the first round. Like, I like Latu there. I like Verse there.
Him.
I don't think Turner gets that far down, but if he does for some reason, I think they pick him.
Yeah.
I think Newton's in play there. And again, I think the sneaky one is corner. I really do. Like, I think that's the sneaky one. DeJean's a one that makes a ton of sense. I would like to think I like Kool-Aid. I wouldn't hate that pick, but I'd like to think that they would come off that. But it wouldn't shock me if they took Kool-Aid. If Arnold falls, I think they take him. If Mitchell falls, I think they take him. So that's where I think
they're going to be gone in the top 15. Eh?
I agree. Yeah. Arnold might. I don't think he should because I love Arnold. I think his tape's phenomenal. But
I think I think Arnold and Mitchell will be the first off the board.
I agree. But we'll see. Like I don't know. The corner class is a little bit weird. I don't know when the run's going to start because the offensive players are so good this year. If Atlanta takes like Dallas Turner at 8, like Mitchell might not come off the board until like 15 to Indianapolis or like 13 to the Raiders. So then you only have to push Arnold down that far. So again, like it's an interesting conversation, but Mims is my personal favorite. I'm not overly confident that he's going to be the pick, though. I think that it's going to be defense. I think that the internal belief that this team has is that they have enough pieces and that their scheme is going to do enough for them that they don't need to spend premium picks on offense. That's my guess if I was guessing. And I think they feel differently about the other side of the ball.
What would you do year one with Mims?
I'd sit him.
Yeah, you just build them. Yeah,
I would sit him. I don't think he can play guard. He's too big.
No, either do I.
So,
but bro, can I ask you? Aren't you so like? Don't you watch that film and you're like, this guy is a freaking mountain, and the way he moves for the size, especially laterally, you're like, holy jeez! Like guys are not supposed to be those smooth of movers. And what I liked is you watch some of his film, and that guy, as much as I agree with you. For a guy with not many reps under his belt as some of the other guys in his class, he was a lot more technically sound than I expected, but he can downright just turn into a bully when he wants to because he's just so powerful, man. Listen, I wouldn't be mad. And I also think because of what you talked about up here, I think when you add in how he moves and what he's got up here, I do think he can make that shift to the left side. I don't think that
two things here. One, I was listening to an interview that Mims did. He said he actually practiced at both sides at Georgia.
Okay.
So it would not be a total rebuild to put him at left tackle. One. Two, I am not remotely confident that Teron Armstead's going to play like more than 10 minutes. I think if you draft Mims, like obviously I said sit him, and I think that's a tough sell to a lot of fans, and I understand why it's tough to see your team in a winning window and take a player that you don't necessarily have an immediate fit for. I'd be shocked if Mims doesn't play like 5-6 games as a rookie. Also, I think there's a chance that maybe Austin Jackson isn't that dude at right tackle. And I think that's another thing that you have to think about is Austin Jackson's had one good year.
Yeah.
Just the one. And so again, like this is what I talked about earlier, right? Is you have to think of picks more long-term, right? Because that's how teams look at them. So if they take Mims, to me, it's okay. There's a path to him playing this year, and there's also a path to him just being your left tackle of the future. Yep. The other argument I would make, and we can wrap this up and pivot to other positions, is they're going to pay Tua a second contract. I'm not here to debate that. That's what's happening. It is what it is. Wherever side of the spectrum you fall on, sure. If Tua's your guy, if that's the guy that you're committing to, You have to build a very good offensive line in front of him.
I agree.
We can sit here live long day and debate Tua. I don't want to do that because nobody's made an interesting point about Tua in like 3 years. But you have to agree that he needs a good offensive line to be at his best. And you can say about every quarterback, but I think that's especially true for Tua, and that's fine. That's not a knock on him. It's just, it is what it is. Mims, to me, is just like, there's a version of this where he's a perennial Trent Williams all-pro.
Hot take based on what I've seen from him, making fans fall in love with Lynn Bowden Jr. and Malcolm Perry. We haven't seen it yet, but I think if you gave him a top 3 offensive line, that he could be just as successful with or without Tyreek.
Sure.
I truly believe that.
Regardless of who he's throwing the ball to, regardless of what the Dolphins do, if you pay Tua, you have to pay him with the understanding that the offensive line has to be a priority.
Yeah, I agree.
Like that. That's just like, that's where I'm at. Like, if you're going to pay Tua, fine, but you got to commit to the player that he is. You have to take him with all the strengths, all the weaknesses, everything that comes with it. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you pay Tua, though, you have to commit to him. You have to. And the offensive line is a huge part of that, right? Like that's just where we're at.
Before we pivot off a tackle, I want to get your thoughts on this. Drew Rosenhaus talked about it. I got to get your thoughts on this. JC Latham, you see him as a top 10 pick, like it's being talked about right now?
Top 10?
Drew Rosenhaus went on TV in South Florida and said...
Is that his agent?
Yeah, and said he's not getting... Okay, he said, sorry, Dolphin fans, he's not getting outside the top 10.
Well, that's his agent. I'm sorry. Drew Rosenhaus, nice guy. He's going to say... He has
a
to
lot
say
of
that.
mocks, CBS and ESPN
say?
Had him going in the top 10 now, too. I don't know.
Here's the thing.
And the thing I'm hearing is because he's... NFL circles, they believe he has the highest floor. Which I think that's alt, but whatever.
The highest floor for Latham.
Yeah.
I like Latham. I don't want to make it sound like I don't like Latham. Like if the Dolphins took Latham at 21, I'd be like, sure.
Yeah, so would I.
Yeah, I'd be like,
but
okay.
There's talk about him going in the top 10 now, and it's
I don't know about that. That's a little rich for me. We can keep this quick. My reason for having Latham outside the top 10 is I think I see a player on film who's not confident in his own abilities right now. I see him false starting a lot because he thinks he's not quick enough to get out of his stance to stop speed rushers.
You think that's why he didn't test? Because he wasn't doing good numbers in his practicing?
Maybe. Yeah. Like I think like he is a guy who commits a lot of penalties, but they're not like holding. They're like him getting out of his stance too quickly because the guy across from him beat him with speed a couple of reps ago and he's worried about it. Like that's what I'm projecting.
Can't wash out the last play, man. That's one of the worst things you can do in any professional sport.
Exactly. Right. So I think there's some confidence building that you have to do with Latham, but I think he's a good football player. Like, but top 10, I don't know. That's rich.
Do you get on board with Olu Fashanu apparently dropping in NFL circles because of his 8.5-inch hands?
I hope not.
that tape is just way too good.
I agree.
I hope they have an issue with it. Let him drop to 21. Let's go.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Buddy, there'd be a smoke trail behind whoever's announcing that 21st pick if he's on the board. Let me tell you that. You know? All right. Let's move on here. I want to get your thoughts on this class. Barry Jackson reported yesterday that the Dolphins have taken strong interest into Ja'Tavion Sanders. Tony Pauline, 2 of his first 3 mocks had us taking Ja'Tavion Sanders at 21. Okay.
Overall?
Yeah. And then when at Pro Day, Tony Pauline was talking about how plugged in. Like, I think to be honest with you, I had a discussion with yesterday. I wouldn't be surprised if Worthy and Sanders are smokescreen because they like Byron Murphy. But anyways, what are your thoughts on the tight end class? And if he starts falling and it looks like he's going to get outside the top 15 and you want to get ahead of, let's say, the Bengals, would you move up a little bit if it wasn't expensive for Brock Bowers?
Oh, man. All right. So we'll start with the tight end class. I think it's bad.
Okay.
It's not good. I'm sorry. I tried to get there. I watched like 12 dudes and I was just like, there's got to be somebody. However, to answer your other question, Brock Bowers is my highest graded tight end of all time. He beat out Kyle Pitts for that spot.
Wow.
I think Brock Bowers is a really good player. He's my 4th overall prospect in this class, behind Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake May, and Caleb Williams. The highest grade I've ever given out to a tight end. So would I personally trade up for him? Maybe. I'd consider it. However, I would tell you that there is a 0% chance that Chris Grier would trade up in the 1st round for a tight end. 0. It's 0. I don't think there's no way.
I'm hoping
if they were going to take a tight end,
I'm hoping Mike McDaniel.
No, it's not happening. I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. I would love it to happen. I'd be very happy about it. No shot. I think if they were going to take a tight end high, it was last year. I hope, because this tight end class it's just not for me. I was incredibly disappointed with Jatavian Sanders' tape. I was. If they take him at 55, I think that's probably my least favorite realistic position for them to take at 55. I don't think he's worth the 55th pick in the draft. I don't. And I have a really, really hard time thinking that there's not a receiver that they could take there, right? Because here's the thing with Sanders. To me, he's a receiver. He doesn't block. He's not good at it. So to me, like, the comparison is like, if I'm sitting there at 55 and one of Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, Jalen Polk are on the board. I'm trying to name like other receivers. There's a bunch of guys who I'd consider there over Sanders, like Malachi Corley, who I don't even love that much, but I'd rather have him over Sanders. Like, Sanders, to me, I have to compare him against the receivers, because if I draft Sanders, I'm not asking him to block. I'm not asking him to do really anything besides stand in the slot and run straight. Right. And the other thing and again, this sounds like I hate Sanders. I really don't. Like, I have like a high day 3, late day 2 grade on. Like, he's fine. But for the Dolphins specifically, you're going to have to manufacture touches if this player is going to get to his ceiling, because that's what his tape is at Texas. This is not somebody who lines up in the slot and he's cooking slot cornerbacks with routes. This is a guy who gets screens. He gets schemed open. You know, they use Xavier Worthy. They send him and A.D. Mitchell down the field. They run Sanders underneath. They throw him a little dump off. He turns upfield. He's got blockers for yak, right? Like, that's the type of tight end that Sanders is. The Dolphins have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert. I'm just naming players I'd rather throw a screen to.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's where I'm at with Sanders, right? If you take a tight end, that player has to be so astronomically good to merit giving them touches over the players that you already have. Receivers, a different story, because you throw to your receivers a lot. You throw to them a lot more to your tight ends, right? So for me, Sanders doesn't get there on the tape. He doesn't get there on the film. And he doesn't get there on the fit either. So, like, I don't see it personally, and I don't think Chris Grier or Mike McDaniel care about tight end. I don't think they care about it, like, even a bit. They paid Jonnu Smith. They extended Durham Smythe. Last year, they were in a perfect position to take an impact tight end, and they didn't do it. And that's fine. That's where they're at. Maybe they attack one on day 3. I'd prefer that, frankly, because I think some of the day 3 guys are like good tight end 3s who can block. I don't see it with Sanders, man. I'm just not going to get there for Miami.
So let's talk about weapons then. So I'll give you my top 10 wide receivers. I got Marvin Harrison at 1, Neighbors at 2, Adunze at 3, Thomas at 4. Me and you got the exact same 4. Then where we kind of start to differ is I got Leggett at 5. We both have McConkey at 6. I have A.D. Mitchell at 7, Polk at 8, Keon Coleman at 9, and Roman Wilson at 10. And then I got Corley at 11, Worthy at 12, Franklin at 13, Purcell at 14, Javon Baker at 15. And yet I like Purcell, I have a 4th round grade on. So that tells you how I actually do think about these guys, right? People look at, oh, you got him 14th. You think he's crap. Let's talk about this, because your 33rd team put out a mock today. I'm sure that went over really well with Dolphin fans. I know people who went listen to me, it didn't go over very well with. Shout out to Marcus Mosher, because he is great at what he does. He follows the Cowboys and stuff. He's fantastic. Xavier Worthy at 21. He's on my list of guys I do not want at 21. I think he needs to be an incredible outlier at 165. I'll give you a perfect example. This is what I tell people. So some people will think I'm a broken record, but you probably haven't heard this yet. What's more impressive to you? 165-pound soaking wet guy that runs a 4.21, or a guy who, I don't know, is about 6'2", 221 pounds and runs a 4.39? What's more impressive to
definitely,
you? Right?
Definitely the big guy, of course.
Right? So
Yes.
that's why, and then you look at what we need. See, this is where I start getting into it, Dante, because we're talking about, like, we've been talking about other positions and what we need guys to do at that position. This is why I don't like Xavier Worthy. He doesn't allow you to be versatile with Tyreek and Waddle. They're going to be sticking more so to the boundary because I view he's strictly a slot guy, or you're going to use him on gadget plays. That's how I view Xavier Worthy at the next level, where you got a guy like Xavier Legette, where you can flex on the boundary. He can be the big body, but you can also use him. I mean, and when you put him in the boundary, it allows you to move around Tyreek or Waddle, because of his speed. You could throw him out of the slot if you really wanted to on drag. I mean, we've seen him take drags for 81 yards. You know what I mean? So, what are your thoughts on if they go wide receiver weapon at 21 or 55? I think, like, you look at Beckham and stuff, I don't buy the Worthy. I don't buy that they're looking for an outlier just because he's fast. It just doesn't make sense to me. With what they're looking at, it seems like they're looking like a bigger body, someone to be what they hoped Izakama would eventually develop into. And what are your thoughts on 21 and 55 if they're attacking wide receiver and finding a weapon?
Sure. So I think, and I spoke about this on the Dolphins Talk draft series that we're doing. My only receiver that I would consider at 21 is Brian Thomas Jr., assuming that the top three are gone, right? Like,
yeah. So am I. Yeah.
Neighbors, Harrison, they're going to go top 10.
Yeah, they're
We're
gone.
not even considering them. If, they get Laramie Tunsil, that changes things, right? But assuming that they don't, for me, it's Brian Thomas Jr. at 21. I think he's a perfect fit. I'd love to see him come off the board there to Miami. I think he gives you kind of what you talked about, right? The differentiating skill set. Like, he's a big guy. He can win at the catch point, but he's also fast, right? So, like, you kind of get, like, the fit, right? So that makes a lot of sense. For me, I think 55 is the best place to target a receiver. I just have a hard time believing that they're all going to be gone by that point. You might have to move up a little bit, and I wouldn't hate that depending on who they get when they move up. So I think 55 is a better spot. Worthy, here's the thing. I'm not convinced necessarily that the Dolphins want a differentiated skill set. I'm not quite there, because Izukama was a 5th round pick or 4th round pick. 5th. I think he was a 5th out of Texas Tech. So, like, I don't know how much that tells me about what they really want there. And then Odell Beckham is just, like, probably the best receiver left, right? Like, I don't know that necessarily tells me that they want a different body type there. I think what makes the Dolphins offense so hard sometimes to project your receivers is that you have to understand that I want a differentiated skill set. I'm with you. Like, that's what I want. Like, I want the bigger body guy. I don't want Worthy. What I think, though, is tough is that the Dolphins offense is specialized to the point where if you get a bigger guy who isn't, not fast isn't the word I'm looking for, quick is the word that I'm looking for. If they can't hit their spots, the timing of the offense gets mucked up really bad. Like not well. And so that's, again, I would prefer the Xavier Legettes of the world, the Brian Thomases of the world. But I think where Marcus was coming from and where a lot of people are coming from with the Texas stuff is that if you put Worthy in, you still get to do all the things that you do currently. You just do them at a higher level. And I think other people outside of the Dolphin kind of bubble on Twitter are concerned with Tyreek Hill's longevity in Miami. Like, I think that is
but Worthy ain't built like that, right? Like, this guy's never going to be a one-off for Tyreek. He's never going to get turned into that stout. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree with you. Again, I'm with you. I think it is, but from the outside looking in, I don't know that the Dolphins want that differentiated skill set. I'm not convinced because they haven't shown me enough that they care about that. I want them to, but I'm not quite there. Look, I wouldn't take Worthy at 21. I would not. But if you're trying to be predictive.
Yeah, okay. But I feel like that's just a cop-out because of the whole speed thing. But let me ask you this. Let me be serious. But let me ask you this. Doesn't sweat start to trickle down to your brow a little bit when you just think about him facing press in the NFL? Like, okay, this isn't the SEC where, and listen, the SEC has a lot of great cornerbacks, But how many of those guys are going to go to the NFL and turn into top flight guys in the slot or on the boundary? Like, if you put him on the boundary, I know what's happening. You're running a bubble screen to either that side or this side. He's either faking me out to this side with the bubble screen that's going to this side, or the bubble screen's going to him. But then if you stick him in the slot, man, the slot corners in the NFL, he's going to be, if he can, because like, listen, you can win with your release package with pure speed in college a lot more than you can win at the NFL. Mm-hmm. If he's not jammed, and you know, I mean, hell, we saw what L'Jarius Sneed and those guys were doing to Tyreek in the playoffs. Remember, they're putting him on his ass trying to get off the line, and that's Tyreek, who has much stronger base and much stronger upper body, right? And he's been in the NFL and has a much more refined release package. But anyways, I digress. My whole problem is, okay, if you don't put his ass in the dirt, how easy is it to just play a little off of him, get handsy with him, and reroute him? I mean, you talked about the timing. It's going to be easy to throw that timing off by just rerouting him. I don't even got to throw you on your ass off the line. I can just reroute you when you try to come across my face, and here we go. So like, that's where I'm at with this guy.
It's a completely valid concern. I don't disagree with any of the evaluation points that you make there. I just think that Mike McDaniel is going to be sitting in a room somewhere and he's going to watch this guy play. And I'm telling you, I know that he likes him. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to take him at 21, but Mike McDaniel is the master of ducking press coverage. The whole offense is trying to get people to duck press coverage. Right. Mm-hmm. So like if you're Mike McDaniel, right, like I'm trying to put myself in Mike McDaniel's shoes rather than like my own.
Yeah.
If I'm Mike McDaniel, I'm sitting there and I'm going, I'm the best play caller in the league when it comes to getting my fast guys open room to run at ducking press coverage. I run a timing based offense, and I might need a guy like this next year because we don't know what's going on with Tyreek Hill. He's flirting with retirement and stuff off the field, whatever that be. Who cares? Right.
Yeah.
So I could see the Dolphins talking themselves into Worthy. That's all I'm saying. Like, I personally, if I was a GM and I was sitting up there in the NFL draft world, I would let somebody else take a shot on Xavier Worthy. It wouldn't be me personally. I could not get there. The weight worries me. This is not Devontae Smith. You know, like he's a good player. His film's fine. I have like a second round grade on him or whatever, but like, I would not be the guy to do it. However, if he's going to work anywhere in the entire NFL, it's Miami. It is. Yeah. Like I like that's all I'm saying is like I wouldn't do it. I think I'd prefer Xavier Legette. I'd prefer Brian Thomas Jr. Obviously, I'd prefer Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, Jalen Polk. It's just not like I think Miami's going to sit there and be like, if he's this guy in our system and this team with these players. You're not pressing Xavier Worthy if he's on this field with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. You're not doing it. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just saying that's like taking Tutu Atwell at 21, bro.
I agree. I'm not disagreeing.
Oh my God. You know what I mean? And we've seen what he's turned into. He can't stay healthy, right? And it's like a 10-pound difference, 5-pound difference between the two of them. Right?
It's not much. I'll look it up.
Yeah.
It's not
I think
much.
Tutu was like either 155 or 160. I don't remember. Anyways, I just can't get there. You know what I mean? Because I see it on Twitter too. Like, not even with the Marcus Mosher draft. I've been seeing it over the last couple of weeks. And man, you know, like I'll take a Donnie Mitchell, you know, over him every day of the week. You know what I mean? So that's where I am with it. But all right, let's keep it rolling here. I got a good question for you. Would you rather trade back from 21 or trade up from 55?
Trade up from 55.
And is that because you feel like there's going to be good receivers in striking distance? Like you seem pretty dead set that weapons should be 55 and 21 should be trenches on either side, right? That's where you're at pretty much.
Yeah, I think for me, 55 is like receiver or guard. For me, right? Like I'd like Christian Haynes in that area, like
I love
Dominic
him.
Cooney or Cooper Beebe. Like I would target all three of those guys in that range. So like for me, it's like guard and receiver at 55. And I think I released my full top 140 big board this morning. If you have some time, please go check it out. I'd greatly appreciate it. Worked very hard on it.
Plug it. Tell people where they can find it right now.
They can find it on Twitter. I tweeted it out this morning. Casual Draft Analyst Substack. And so one of the things that I noted in that when I was looking at the class from like a big picture POV, and I don't know if you feel similarly, to me, there's like a pretty big talent drop off after like, I don't know, 75, 80-ish. So to me, like I would be trying to maximize how high I'm picking higher in the draft. And so for me, like when the Dolphins have like, they have, what's their pick in round 5? It's like 138 or 158, I think, right? Yeah. So for me, it would be, I'd be trying to move that pick and every other day 3 pick they have to get to like 70 something to make like, and I would just make 3 picks and I'd go home. Like that's where I'm at with this draft is I think that you need to get higher to get the better players, which is obvious, duh. But to me, this is not a class where you trade back a bunch of times. Like I think you have the guys that you target and you go up and you get them. Like that's where I'm kind of at with this year, because I think people NIL has caused a lot of kids to go back to school. The draft is a 10+ year low on early entrance. There's not a lot of young players coming from college this year because they're making money in college and more to them. I think it's great that NIL exists. But
there's a lot less pressure.
Yeah, but it affects the NFL draft. There's not as good depth this year, at least in my personal opinion. There's not a lot of upside in those later rounds. You have a lot of older prospects who you kind of just like know what they are because they've played college football for 4 to 5 years. So for me, I'd have my targets at 55. If I have 8 targets and there's 8 picks left, cool. I'll sit at 55 and I'll be comfortable with my guy. But if I only have a couple targets, like I'd go up. I really would. I wouldn't even hate trying to get back up into the first round. Like I don't know how that works. I don't really think they have the picks for that. That's a fever dream. But my point being is that I would stay at 21, take a premium position at 21, edge, tackle, corner, maybe guard, but probably not. And then at 55, I would target trying to move up maybe for a receiver or an interior player that you really like. So that's where I'm at. I don't love the depth of this class. Trading back's not terrible. Trading back's always going to be good from a value proposition. But for me, I'm a little bit worried about like what you're actually getting, depending on how far you move back.
Yeah. Basically, you don't want to give up a quality pick for a quantity of picks, basically, is where you're at, right? Mm-hmm. Let's switch over to defense a little bit, because you said that you're surprised. Basically, you think the surprise is the need at corner. My surprise is the need at safety. And a good one. You know, you got Elijah Campbell as the only depth behind Jordan Poyer and Javon Holland. And then I say this, Jordan Poyer is a short-term solution. We can both agree on that, right?
Absolutely.
Javon Holland is represented by the same people who represent Tua and Christian Wilkins, athletes first. I've heard rumblings he wants to reset the market. I don't even got to go any further to indicate we might have a Christian Wilkins situation on our hands. There's no 50-year option. You talked about Cooper DeJean. Let's start out there. Is Cooper DeJean a safety or corner for you?
Oh, man. I'm going to take the draft analyst cop-out answer. I think it depends on the scheme that you're going to run.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to run a 3 safety look, which the Dolphins might, I think he can be like that kind of slot player, right? Like, I don't know if I tweeted this or not, but I know I thought it. Like, there's some like Kyle Hamilton usage to his game. He's not as good as Kyle Hamilton, because Kyle Hamilton's tape was bonkers, and he's a very good football player. Cooper DeJean's not as good as Kyle Hamilton, but like, you could see a world in where you put him in the slot and you just let him be big and long. And like, that's great, right? Like that's what the Ravens did with Kyle Hamilton last year, right? They were just like, we're going to place you here and your arms are really long. So you're going to shut down zone windows. You're good enough mover to cover in man, and you're physical enough to tackle. Like DeJean has the same profile. He's much more of a corner. He's not quite as instinctual. Right, different player, but like
it's pretty instinctive though, bro.
No, he is. I agree, but like Hamilton is like, he's running 10 steps into a gap before.
Oh, you remember how down people were on him because of his combine?
No, dude, don't even get me started. Ridiculous, absurd. Safeties 40 times. You don't need to kill him for that. Again, like DeJean, like I could see him in that role. However, it's tough to watch him play corner and be like, I don't like him a corner, because he moves really well. Like he's very,
you know what I think he is
for a big guy.
I think in this draft class, I think when you talk about the star role or star player, I think
that's
is
the
there a
Hamilton
better
role.
is there
That's
a
what it is. Yeah.
I don't think there's a better star role player right now in the secondary than him right now. Like, and when you add him, imagine the things he allows you to do with Ramsey, right? With Kendall Fuller, you know what I mean? Like, you know, because even when they lined him up in the box or blitzing off, you know, off the line of scrimmage and stuff, man, when he got in the backfield, right? If it was a run play,
He's physical.
Damn
He
good,
can hit a little
and
bit.
takes good angles. He could pursue it too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple times where teams threw screens and he blew it up right at the line of scrimmage. Didn't even give an inch. Just boom.
Was it the Penn State game where he pushed the receiver into the dude who was catching the
Yeah,
ball?
yeah.
He just came up and just decked him right into the screen. Incomplete
amazing,
pass.
bro.
Yeah, it was great. It was phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh my God. So what are your takes on? Do you think safety might be a surprise pick here with one of the first two picks?
I don't think they'll do it in the first round. Not a pure safety, right? If they take DeJean, that's kind of like the Troy Fontenot conversation, right? Like that makes more sense to me. There's no way they take like a pure safety at 21.
Like a Tyler Nubin or
no way. But
someone like
at
that,
55, I wouldn't rule it out at all. And I wouldn't blame them either. Unlike the tight end class, I've come around on the safety group a little bit. It's not.
Who do you like? Who are your guys in it?
I like Nubin a good bit. He's my safety one. I still have a top 50 grade on Kitchens. I think he's got range. I don't think he's a Dolphins target. I like Bullard from Georgia a good bit.
He's a playmaker, right?
Yeah, he's just like
feisty little guy.
You don't love the speed necessarily. He's not slow, but he's not like a super explosive.
Quick. He's quick. Yeah. He's not explosive. He's quick, right?
Yeah, but I mean, he just like always in the right spot. He's hitting people. He plays man coverage.
Energy in that motor, bro.
Zone. Yeah, he runs all over the field. He's a good run defender. He takes good angles. It's just like, like if I'm a coach, Javon Bullard might be like my third overall player on the board, you know, right? Like a GM's going to take a different perspective. As a coach, it's just like, this dude's great. So I wouldn't hate, but I think Bullard's like my 50th overall player. So if they take him to 55, sign me up. I think that's a good pick. I think if you keep Javon Holland long term, I really like Bullard as a complement to somebody like with a little bit more range like Javon Holland has. Like the reason I don't think they're in on Kitchens is, to me, he's a little bit Javon Holland redundant, at least in my opinion. I feel the same way about like Kalen Bullock from USC, Dadrian Taylor Demerson, who I love a lot.
I love him.
I love him too, but I think he's a little bit redundant of Javon Holland. So I would look at like the Cole Bishops of the world from Utah, Bullard from Georgia. I'm trying to think. There's like one more like strong safety that I kind of like.
Malik Mustafa.
Mustafa's fun, man. He's cool. He's like really small, but he just blows people up. He'd be cool. Jaden Hicks from Washington State is the other one.
I love it. Listen, I have Dijon as my safety one, and then Nubin and Hicks are 2 and 3. So if you take Dijon out and you have him as a corner, then Nubin would be my 1 and Hicks would be my 2.
Hicks a lot.
I love Hicks, man. He is good, bro.
Yeah.
Big fan.
I like Hicks. I think at 55 for me, it would be Nubin if he falls, Bullard, Hicks. That would probably be it. In the 5th round, you start to talk about guys like Mustafa, Cole Bishop. I like Bo Braid as well from Maryland. I don't know where he goes, but I think he's like a really nice like box player. I think he plays like a good Taylor? I didn't finish Trey Taylor. So
I'm very high on him. I love him.
He's the Air Force kid, right?
Yeah. He won the
I've seen a lot of people high on him, man. But I didn't get there.
Finish him. He's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Like if you're talking about like if you can get him in the 5th or 6th,
sure.
I think that's a fantastic value pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Brad Martin says, "Hey, Reason, do you think it would be possible to pick at 21 and then package the rest of this year's picks to move up back into the first?" I mean, I'm sure it's possible. You want to go balls deep here. You know what I mean? I mean, what would that be? That would be the 55th, and then you'd be packaging a 5th to 6th and a 7th. You'd need to put in something from next year. Yeah, you need to add a 3rd or 4th from next year for sure.
Yeah, no team would take that either. The only way you get back into the first round is if you have a really high 2nd, or if you give them a 1st from the next year. Yeah. And really, I think it would be more so a team trying to get back into the first for
Bo Nix or Penix if he's on the board, and that's when you can get like, their second this year or first next. I mean, we've go back and look at the ransom the Bills gave up to get back into the first and get JP Lossman.
Oh man,
buddy,
that's a throwback.
They gave up like a
Wow.
first, a second, a third, and a fourth, if I remember correctly.
Jesus.
If I remember correctly,
for JP Lawson.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tell you, buddy. Yeah.
Woof.
What are your thoughts on now we've talked a little bit about guard. What are your thoughts on center? I mean, Aaron Brewer's been brought in here. Where do you sit? Are you more of try and find a guy day 3, like maybe a Matt Lee or something like that? Where are you on that? Or because listen, if they're going center, I would say go 55. I'm a Zach Frazier guy. I think
Me too.
When you talk about day 1 starter at the position, I think he's a more polished day 1 starter than a Barton or a JPJ at the position. And also I want to ask you on that position, are you surprised at how down people are on Van Pran compared to how a lot of people had him as their center 1 heading into this year?
Okay, so I am one of those people who is down on Van Pran.
Is it the athleticism you're down on? Is that why?
He looked really stiff to me this year. I don't like stiff centers. Stiff centers worry me. You gotta be able to pivot and move. And I thought I wanted to see him take a step up in his technical play from the summer as well, and I didn't see that either. However, I think he could be on the board in the 5th round, and I think he'd be a good pick in the 5th round, right? Like I feel good about a player like that on day 3. To answer your question about the center class overall, I think it's very strong. I don't think the Dolphins do anything about it.
Yeah.
I really, like, if I had to guess, I think they paid Aaron Brewer enough money to that he's going to be the center this year. Like this was not like a 1-year, $4 million deal. And I'm not saying they paid him too much money or anything like that, but they didn't pay him to the point where you're going to replace him in the 1st or the 2nd round. I don't think. Now, the reason that I think that takes Frazier off the board, I think that takes Graham Barton off the board personally. I think they could take him and play him at guard. I don't love that. I think he's a center, but I think JPJ's interesting if he falls for medical reasons in the 2nd round because he's got the girth to play guard, right? Like he looks like a guard. He don't look like a center. He looks like a guard.
Yeah.
And so I could see him at guard. I don't think they do anything about center though. I really don't. And I was super high on Frazier in the summer. I do a yearly team where I release all like my guys. He was my center in the summer and he was my center when I released the final version last week. So I've been on Frazier for a while. I think he's a really good football player,
awesome.
But I don't think the Dolphins are going to do anything about center. I think they view Aaron Brewer as a starter there, and people can say that Aaron Brewer played guard and they could kick him back to there. You did not watch Aaron Brewer play guard. Aaron Brewer should not be playing guard. He's a center. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like he's a perfectly fine signing at center. I feel okay about him playing that position.
Well, you also think he's probably going to find another level under Butch and McDaniel too, right?
I mean, he has to.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't, they're going to have a problem. So,
I agree.
You know, like he just has to. Whether I think he does or doesn't is almost irrelevant because if he doesn't, like, it's not going to be a fun year at certain points. So,
okay, so one last position I wanted to talk about you because they've kind of brought in a few for top 30 visits and such. Are you going to be shocked on day 3 if they, given the stable they already have, are you going to be shocked on day 3 if they take a running back? I mean, they brought in Rasheen Ali. They brought in Isaac Garendo, guys who are like 5th round picks. You know, they had the local pro day. They had Frank Gore Jr. there, who is probably a UDFA, maybe a 7th if a team wants to roll it on him. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think they're going to shock us? And on day 3, I mean, I know where you stand on taking running backs in the first 3 rounds, but what do you think that, you know, I mean, this fan base wants to see more Chris Brooks. I didn't get bringing back Salvon Ahmed. I mean, talk about an offseason workout warrior. You know what I mean? I didn't get that, right? You know, Mostert and Jeff Wilson, we can both agree are not long-term solutions. They seem to be doing their due diligence on day 3 and UDFA guys. Do you think there's going to be some talent added at running back that might surprise us?
It wouldn't shock me only because I think when you get to day 3, you can find a lot of value at running back because most teams feel like I do, and they're not going to take them high. And then you can stack that on top of, I think this running back class is bad. Yeah. And so I think we're going to see there's going to be a run on running backs. I don't know that we see running back go in the top 60 picks. I think it's Dallas second round pick is what, like 55 or 58, I think, right? Or something like that. Or they right ahead of Miami. They're in that range, right? Like they're in the 50s. Dallas is like the first team that I think could take a running back, but they're like, I think they're late 50s, man. Like we might not see somebody go in the top 60 if they pass. So look, the Dolphins might just be sitting there. Here's the thing with day 3 picks, man. And you know this, but you just got to take day 3 picks has got to be BPA. Like you got to throw positional value, like maybe not in the 4th round, but like 5, 6, 7. Here's the thing. If a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick makes the 53-man roster, that pick's a hit.
Yeah,
it is, because most players drafted in that round do not make the roster. They don't. They most guys don't even play in the NFL. So when you're picking at that point in the draft, you are picking for special teams and you are picking for upside, guys that you can put on the practice squad who are going to pass waivers that other teams don't care about, and you can develop for a couple years, and maybe they play a role for you down the future. So when you look at a position like running back, right? Like, I don't know, like the kid from Louisville might be a really good kick returner for you now. That's another thing you got to consider, right? Like I know they have Braxton Berrios, blah, blah, blah. But like that, like, so you have to almost like reframe how you think about day 3 picks. Those guys are not expected to even make your 53-man roster. So if they take a running back on day 3, I'm fine with it, right? Because it's just like, hey, maybe he was the best player on the board. We think he can play special teams. We think he can be a kickoff guy. And we're going to cut Chris Brooks and Salvin Ahmed, and he's going to be our RB4. And maybe he develops. Maybe Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson get hurt, God forbid, and he becomes our RB2 behind A-Chain, or maybe A-Chain gets hurt, and whatever. Day 3 picks, you need to take somebody who has a path to the roster, because those guys are not going to have paths to the roster usually. Running backs always do, because they can do so much for you, and it's a position where guys get injured a lot. So honestly, it would not surprise me if they take a running back on day 3, because I think you have to throw positional value out the window in the 5th round. Like you got to take good football players, like wherever you can find them.
Any guys you like from that? My 2 guys from that class are Benson and Wright, Jalen Wright and Trey Benson from Florida State and Tennessee.
Wright's my guy. He was my I call it the all Hollywood team. He was my guy for running back. I'm a little interested in Tyrone Tracy from Purdue. He's got some juice.
Yeah, he does.
Former receiver. Yeah, former receiver. He's big. He has no idea where he's going, but if he goes the right way, he's very explosive. And hey, the Dolphins, Mike McDaniel, coach him up a little bit. Not bad. He can catch the football out of the backfield. I like that. Really enjoyed Marshawn Lloyd's tape from USC. I just think he's like almost the exact opposite of Tracy. He knows where he's going. It's just, what does he do when he gets there? He's really tiny, but he loves to run over people. Does that translate? I don't know. We'll see. He's fun though. I don't.
What do you think of Braylon Allen? What do you think of Braylon Allen?
Allen actually was one of the hardest evaluations for me, because I watched him over the summer, and you watch him in the Wisconsin offense, and he just looks like the very stereotypical Wisconsin running back, downhill runner, really, really good in a straight line, big dude, right? And then you watch him this year with the scheme change, right? They brought in Phil Longo, I think, at offensive coordinator. They did the air raid at Wisconsin. He's running out of the shotgun. He just looks out of place. My man looks like a fish out of water. It's just a bad scheme fit. The film this year wasn't great. It really wasn't. I have a 3 on him though. Like, I think he's not going to be a scheme fit for any of the Shanahan teams, but like any team that's going to run a lot of gap power stuff, a lot of duo. Perfect. Yeah, I think you put Braylon Allen in there. Like if the Chargers draft him, like I'm just going to be like, yeah, great pick, man. Like Jim Harbaugh's going to run the hell out of him.
They're eyeing Corum.
I know, but again, that's it. I think Corum. I didn't love Corum. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't like Corum's tape that much. He worries me. But I like Allen. I'm gonna bet on what I saw 2 years ago as opposed to what I saw this year.
Over 700 of you are in the chat between YouTube and Twitter. God's Child says, let's start an experiment. Draft tough and gritty college players that played in the coldest places for future playoff games. And he says that from Maui. So shout out to him. Any final thoughts, man? And, I got here, I'll bring your site up here for all of you guys who want to check out Dante's draft stuff. He just released his big board. There is the link. Anything you want to plug you got going on?
Yeah, so obviously you got that going on. I really appreciate you guys checking that out. It would mean a lot. And then also, I know Dolphins fans are upset with our recent 7-round mock at the 33rd-team.com, but we are going to be pumping out some really good draft content next week. I'm very, very excited. We're going to be doing live grades for every pick. Former NFL GMs are going to be weighing in. We're going to get we have a ton of scouting reports on the site. We're going to be getting a lot of good stuff. So if you could check out 33rd-team.com too, I'd really appreciate that. And you know what? Look, we're going to have more mock drafts, man. There's going to be better ones coming. We got a 7-rounder next week. We got our NFL insider, Ari Myrov's going to be talking to guys in the league, and he's going to be doing his mock draft. We're going to get some former execs to do mock drafts. So we got a ton of really good content coming. So check out the Casual Draft Analyst. Also check out 33rd-team.com. We do decent amount of Dolphin stuff during the season. So it's a good follow for Dolphins fans.
Awesome. Guys, I'll be live on Sunday with Ryan Roberts. We'll continue to dive into the draft a little bit more. Then I'll be live next week. We'll drop our final big board. It'll be guards. Then I'll release all the big boards that didn't make the cutting board to my Patreons and channel members. We'll do a live 3-round mock draft next week, all hand picked. And then we'll be live for the draft nights 1 and night 2. So check us out. Ton of draft content coming your way. Smash the like button. Subscribe if you're new. I appreciate all y'all for spending some of your Friday with us. And until next time, fins up all day, every day.